The red and blue lights washed over Marcus Reed's windshield like a warning flare, pulsing against the foggy glass as his hands froze on the steering wheel. His camera bag lay open on the passenger seat, lenses catching the light, innocent and exposed. He had been packing up after a charity vigil, candles still burning behind yellow tape, when the sirens came alive. "Sir, step out of the vehicle." The voice was flat. "Bored. Practice." Marcus swallowed and opened the door slowly, the cold air biting through his jacket. Gravel crunched beneath his boots. He could hear his heart beat louder than the cruiser radio. A phone camera somewhere clicked. A stranger, maybe, or no one. It was always hard to tell. "What's the problem, officer?" Marcus asked, keeping his tone steady, his hands visible. The officer's eyes flicked to the camera bag, lingered, hardened. "We got a call," the officer said. "Suspicious activity. You fit the description." Marcus felt it then, that familiar tightening in his chest, the quiet calculation of survival. "Say less. Move slower. Don't argue." "I'm a photographer," Marcus said. "I was hired to document the vigil. I can show you." The officer cut him off with a humorless smile. "Funny thing is," he said softly, leaning closer, "your story doesn't matter yet." The words landed like a verdict. Another officer stepped behind Marcus. A hand brushed his shoulder, guiding, or warning, him forward. Somewhere, unseen, Marcus's body camera blinked red. Recording. Marcus stared at the lens on the cruiser's hood as the officer reached for his wrists, and then the recording light on Marcus's own camera flickered back on. Marcus Reed had learned to read police lights the way sailors read weather. The red meant stop. The blue meant wait. Together, they meant danger disguised as procedure. He turned off the engine and placed the keys on the dashboard before anyone asked. The night was quiet except for the low murmur of radios and the distant hum of traffic. Behind him, candles flickered along the sidewalk where a vigil had just ended. Names written in chalk blurred under passing feet. "Sir, step out of the vehicle." Marcus opened the door slowly. "Evening, officer." "Hands where I can see them." "They are," Marcus said, lifting them slightly, palms open. The officer was white, mid-40s, tired eyes, and resting too comfortably near his holster. A second officer stood back, younger, watching without expression. "What were you doing here tonight?" the first officer asked. "I was hired to photograph the vigil," Marcus said, "by the community center." The officer glanced at the camera bag. "You got ID?" Marcus handed it over. The officer studied it longer than necessary. "Marcus Reed," he read aloud. "You live around here?" "No. So why are you here?" "For work?" Marcus said evenly. "Like I said." The officer smiled thinly. "We got a call about suspicious behavior." Marcus felt his shoulders tense. "What kind of behavior?" "Loitering. Taking pictures. Making people uncomfortable." "I'm a photographer," Marcus said. "There was a public event." The second officer shifted. "You got proof of that?" Marcus nodded toward the bag. "My camera. The contract emails on my phone." "Let's slow this down," the first officer said. "You seem defensive." "I'm answering your questions," Marcus replied. The officer stepped closer. "Too close. You need to watch your tone." Marcus swallowed. "I The officer turned to his partner. "Run him." The word him hung heavy in the air. As they waited, silence stretched. Marcus stared at the cruiser's hood, at the faint reflection of his own face. "Calm. Controlled. Not safe. Any priors?" the first officer asked casually. "No," Marcus said. The radio crackled. "Clean," the second officer muttered. The officer exhaled as if disappointed. Still doesn't explain why someone felt threatened. "Threatened by what?" Marcus asked quietly. The officer shrugged. "You tell me." Marcus looked past him, at the candles, the chalked names, the community members already gone. "So what happens now?" The officer studied him, then nodded toward the cruiser. "We're going to ask you a few more questions downtown, just to clear things up." "Am I being detained?" Marcus asked. The officer paused, smiled again. "Like I said, just questions." A hand brushed Marcus's arm, guiding him forward. "Somewhere, A camera kept recording. The interview room smelled like disinfectant and burnt coffee. Marcus noticed it immediately, the way some people notice flowers or rain. The table was metal, scarred with old scratches. 2 chairs. One bolted to the floor. "Sit," the officer said. Marcus sat today. The door closed behind him with a soft, deliberate click. No slam. No drama. Just enough sound to mark a line. The older officer leaned against the wall instead of sitting. The younger one took the chair across from Marcus, legs wide, notebook unopened. "This won't take long," the younger officer said. "We just need to understand what you were doing." "I already told you," Marcus replied. "I was photographing a vigil." "For who?" the officer asked. "The community center," Marcus said. "Southside Outreach." The officer nodded slowly, as if absorbing something complex. "And you had permission?" "It was public." "So, no." Marcus exhaled through his nose. "Public events don't require permission." The older officer chuckled softly. "That's one way to see it." "What's the other way?" Marcus asked. The room cooled. The younger officer leaned forward. "The other way is that someone felt unsafe. And when that happens, we respond. By bringing me here," Marcus said. By clarifying, the officer replied, "Why are you pushing back?" "I'm not," Marcus said. "I'm answering." The older officer straightened. "You know, most people cooperate without the attitude." Marcus felt the familiar heat rise in his chest. He kept his voice level. "I'm cooperating." "Let's talk about your equipment," the younger officer said. "That camera. High-end." "I work professionally." "Expensive hobby." "It's my job." The officer scribbled something finally. "You shoot a lot of protests." "Community events," Marcus corrected. "Weddings. Editorial." "So yes," the officer said. Marcus said nothing. The older officer stepped closer. "You ever sell photos to media outlets?" "Yes." "Ever misrepresent situations?" "No." "Ever edit footage to make cops look bad?" Marcus looked up. "No." The officer held his gaze. "Too long. Testing. Because that happens." "I document what's there," Marcus said. Silence followed. The hum of the lights pressed down on him. The younger officer flipped a page. "Let's rewind. When you were approached, you raised your voice." "I didn't." "You were argumentative." "I asked questions." "Which escalates things." "So does assuming guilt," Marcus said. The older officer raised a hand. "Careful." Marcus stopped. He folded his hands together, fingers laced tight. "Here's what I see," the younger officer continued. "A man with a camera. At night. Near an emotionally charged event. People already on edge. You understand how that could be perceived." Marcus nodded slowly. "I understand perception. I don't understand why mine doesn't matter." The officer smiled. "It does. Eventually." The word landed heavy. The door opened briefly. Another officer leaned in. "Supervisor's asking how long." "Almost done," the older officer said. The door shut again. "You're recording all this?" Marcus asked. The younger officer glanced up. "Our body cams are on." "My camera was on too," Marcus said. The room shifted. "Just a degree." The older officer's expression tightened. "We'll need to review that." "I'd like my card back," Marcus said. "After we're finished." "With what?" Marcus asked. The younger officer closed the notebook, making sure there's no misunderstanding. Marcus nodded once. "Then let me be clear. I didn't break the law." The older officer sighed, as if disappointed. "No one said you did." "But you brought me here." "Because we can." Silence again, this one heavier. Finally, the younger officer stood. "You'll be free to go shortly. We'll log this as a field interview." Marcus looked up. "Am I being charged?" "No." "Am I suspected of anything?" "Not officially." Marcus swallowed. "Then why does it feel like I am?" Neither officer answered. As the door opened, Marcus caught a glimpse of himself in the reflective glass, tired eyes, jaw set. He understood then. The story was already being written, and he wasn't holding the pen. Marcus didn't go home right away. He sat in his car across the street from the precinct, engine off, phone glowing faintly in his lap. The building looked ordinary in the daylight. Brick, glass, flags barely moving in the morning air. It was harder to believe anything wrong happened inside places that looked like that. He knew that was part of the design. His camera bag rested on the seat beside him. Returned, too neatly zipped. He exhaled, reached in, and pulled out the camera. The memory card slid into his laptop with a soft click. For a second, nothing happened. Then thumbnails bloomed across the screen. Faces, candles, hands clasped together in prayer. A child holding a sign too big for her arms. Marcus clicked the last file. The angle was wide. He had set the camera down while packing, lens tilted toward the street. It caught everything. "Sir, step out of the vehicle." The sound was crisp, too crisp. Marcus leaned closer, shoulders hunching as if the officers could still see him. He watched himself move slowly, hands open, voice calm. "Evening, officer." He paused the video, rewound, played it again. He watched the officer's eyes linger on the camera bag. The shift in posture, the tightening jaw. "We got a call. Suspicious activity." Marcus let the clip run. "You fit the description." His chest tightened. He hadn't noticed how quiet it had gotten. No traffic, no voices, just radios and breath. He jumped when his phone buzzed. "Lena, you okay?" Lena Chavez, investigative reporter, one of the few people who knew how quickly a night like this could turn. Marcus just got out, reviewing footage. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. "Lena, call me." He didn't. Not yet. The video continued. The officer stepping closer. The line that still rang in his ears. "Your story doesn't matter yet." Marcus paused it again. His fingers trembled slightly. He pressed them flat against the table until they stilled. He scrubbed forward. The moment his wrists were guided, not grabbed, not forced, just directed. The kind of contact easy to deny later. He whispered, "There." He replayed it at half speed. The officer's hand, the angle of Marcus's body, the way compliance was framed as consent. Another file caught his eye. A reflection in the parked car window. Someone filming on the phone. The angle was distorted, but the audio was clear. You don't need to be nervous if you didn't do anything wrong. Marcus laughed once. Short, bitter. He checked timestamps, cross-referenced angles. The story assembled itself, frame by frame, without commentary, without exaggeration. His phone rang. "Lena." He answered. "I have it." Her voice was low. "Everything." "Yes." "Clear. Clear enough." A pause. "You know what happens next if we run it." Marcus closed his eyes. He saw headlines, comment sections, his mother's face when she watched the news. "I know," he said. "And you know what happens if you don't." He said nothing. Lena continued, gently. "This isn't about catching them in a lie. It's about showing how easy the truth gets bent." "They'll say context," Marcus said. "They always do. And you'll show the whole thing." Marcus looked at the screen again, at himself standing still while everything moved around him. They already logged it as a field interview, he said, like nothing happened. "That's a narrative," Lena replied, "unless you interrupt it." Marcus swallowed. "Give me a day." "Okay," she said. "But Marcus, don't sit on this too long." After the call ended, Marcus closed the laptop. The silence returned, thicker now. He rested his forehead against the steering wheel. He thought about the candles, the names, the people who trusted him to bear witness. He turned the laptop back on. The footage waited, unedited, unforgiving, and ready. Marcus sat in the lobby of the internal affairs office, the plastic chairs creaking under every shift of weight. The room smelled faintly of paper and recycled air, a sterile scent designed to calm or intimidate. He clutched his camera bag on his lap like armor. Every step here had felt like walking through a gauntlet, each floor tile echoing a memory of the officer's smakes, the casual assumption of guilt. A receptionist barely glanced up. "Mr. Reed?" They're ready for you. He followed the narrow hallway, walls lined with framed commendations and plaques. Awards for community service and excellence in policing stared down at him. He wondered if anyone ever saw the irony. Inside the interview room, 2 officers from earlier, now wearing suits, sat behind a long table. A third, younger, typed on a laptop. Marcus felt the same tightening in his chest. "He's Saturday, Mr. Reed," began the senior officer, voice flat. "We reviewed the reports from last night." "I imagine they match the footage," Marcus said. The officer's expression flickered, then returned to neutral. "We did review your footage. It's informative, but we don't see a problem." Marcus's brow furrowed. "You don't see a problem with what?" "With your stop, everything proceeded according to procedure." Marcus leaned forward. "Procedure doesn't erase perception, and perception isn't random. It's shaped by patterns, by context, by history." The officer tapped a pen against the table. "Patterns are noted, but nothing illegal occurred." "Nothing illegal?" Marcus's voice stayed measured. "So if someone calls the police because they feel threatened by my presence, that justifies a detainment? My rights don't matter until they decide." The younger officer typed something, eyes down. "We're following policy." "Policy doesn't absolve harm," Marcus said. He could feel the anger building, controlled but sharp. "You brought me downtown. You questioned me for an hour. You ignored the bystanders, the community members. All of that counts." A pause. The senior officer sighed. "We understand your concerns, but it's delicate. The department has procedures to protect officers and civilians. Your cooperation is appreciated." Marcus nodded slowly, masking the frustration curling in his stomach. "So my cooperation is appreciated, but my dignity isn't guaranteed." "Noted," the officer said blandly. Marcus shifted. "And if I release the footage?" A faint flicker of something, unease, crossed the senior officer's face. Then it vanished. "We hope that won't be necessary." "Hope?" Marcus repeated. "I hope the truth matters more than the department's comfort." The officers exchanged a glance, polite but guarded. Marcus knew the language. It was carefully curated, acknowledgement without accountability, a dismissal wrapped in courtesy. "I came here to seek accountability," Marcus continued, "not to negotiate for acknowledgement. I don't want your approval. I want transparency." The senior officer leaned back, hands folded. "We'll take it under advisement." Marcus exhaled slowly. "Under advisement? So nothing happens now?" "Correct," the officer said, "unless additional evidence surfaces." Marcus clenched his fists. "My evidence is here," he said, tapping his laptop. "It shows everything. All the angles. Your words, your gestures, the way you guided me. It doesn't lie." The room went quiet. The officer typed something deliberately, then looked up. "We'll review it. That's all we can promise." Marcus swallowed. "Promise? That's different from obligation." Another pause. The senior officer smiled faintly, the kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes. "Mr. Reed, we appreciate your professionalism, and we'll ensure the footage is considered in our review. For now, you are free to leave." Marcus nodded. He stood, shoulders stiff, and packed the laptop into his bag. "I'll be in touch," he said. It was a statement, not a threat. A fact, not a negotiation. As he walked to the door, the younger officer called out softly, "Be careful." Marcus didn't answer. Outside the building, the morning sun hit his face, sharp and insistent. He exhaled, trying to shake the weight of systemic denial pressing down on him. The city felt the same as it always did, busy, indifferent, but Marcus knew the cracks beneath its surface. He had the footage, undeniable and unaltered. The narrative the department had tried to control was now in his hands. And for the first time, he realized that control was a fragile illusion. He walked to his car, eyes scanning the street, the sidewalks, the windows of cafes and apartments. Somewhere, a reflection might capture the truth. Somewhere, someone might see it. The camera in his bag felt heavier now, not because of lenses or metal, but because of responsibility. Each frame he carried was a witness, a statement, a challenge. and Marcus Reed was ready to speak. Marcus parked his car outside a small cafe, the kind with exposed brick walls and hand-letter menus. He hadn't intended to meet anyone here, but Lena Chavez had insisted. She already had a laptop open on the table, a mug of black coffee steaming beside it. Her eyes were sharp, scanning the screen as he approached. "Finally decided to join the real world," she said without looking up. "Not much of a choice," Marcus replied, sliding into the chair across from her. He placed his camera bag on the floor. "Good," Lena said, "because people are going to want to see this. And not just the footage. Your story, the way it was meant to be seen." Marcus exhaled. "I just want it out there. I can't keep replaying last night forever." Lena tapped the laptop. "Then let's do it right. Edit minimally. Context only where needed. Let the video speak for itself." They spent hours going through the files. Marcus highlighted the clips that mattered, the officer's hand brushing his arm, the words, the selective questioning, the bystander's reflections. Lena suggested timestamps, captions with factual notes, and links to official procedures for reference. The cafe emptied around them. The sun dipped low, shadows stretching across the floor. "This is it," Lena said finally. "Once we upload, there's no turning back." Marcus nodded, fingers hovering over the keyboard. "I understand." "Good," Lena said, "because the world will see what they already know deep down. And the department, they'll have to respond." He clicked upload. The site refreshed. Views ticked up almost immediately. Comments poured in, some outraged, some supportive, some incredulous. Screenshots circulated. Tweets, posts, messages. Marcus's phone buzzed relentlessly. "Marcus, you okay?" It was his sister, Keisha. "I saw the video. People are talking." "I'm okay," he said. "Just watching it." "And," she pressed, "what do you feel?" "I don't know," Marcus admitted. "Relieved? Angry? Exhausted? All of it." "That's normal," she said. "Just don't let it consume you." The next morning, Marcus woke to notification from news outlets. Independent journalists had picked up the footage. Local channels ran segments. Panels debated procedure versus rights. His face appeared on screen, calm but measured, a professional trying to make sense of a chaotic encounter. Marcus Reed, freelance photojournalist, documented a community vigil and alleges racial profiling by officers. One anchor read, "The department released a statement. All procedures followed according to protocol. The department is reviewing concerns raised." Polite, dismissive, insistent. The language tried to sound neutral, but Marcus recognized the patterns. They were trying to control the narrative again. Emails and calls flooded his phone, some supportive, some accusatory. Anonymous threats arrived, thinly veiled in civility. "Be careful with your story," one read. "Not everything should be public." Marcus set the phone aside. By midday, a small crowd had gathered outside the precinct. Community members, journalists, curious passers-by. Some held signs, "Accountability now and we see you, Marcus." Marcus slipped through the crowd, unnoticed at first. He felt their eyes on him, some sympathetic, some assessing. He recognized faces from the vigil. He waved quietly. They nodded. Lena caught up with him. People are paying attention. The department can't ignore this. "Yet," Marcus said, "they'll try. They always do." "They might," Lena admitted. "But now, there's proof. And once the public sees proof, it's harder to dismiss." Marcus watched a reporter set up a live shot, camera lens trained on the precinct steps. He realized his work, his documentation, his camera, his decision to speak up, had shifted the balance of power slightly. Not completely, not safely, but enough to demand acknowledgement. He thought about the officers, about the words, the gestures, the subtle intimidation, the control they wielded, and he realized that exposure didn't guarantee justice, but it forced awareness. By evening, the story was trending nationwide. Social media amplified every frame, every word. Marcus sat in his apartment, laptop on his knees, scrolling through responses, supportive messages, threats, analytical threads dissecting each moment of the footage. The world had taken notice. His mother called. "I'm proud of you," she said softly. "But be careful." "I will," he promised. "But I can't stop now." He closed his eyes and thought of the vigil. The candles, the faces he had photographed, the voices that mattered. The footage was out, but the work, the responsibility, was just beginning. And somewhere in the precinct, the officers would see it too. The weight of the public eye pressed down, unrelenting. For the first time, Marcus realized he was no longer alone. The story was bigger than him now, and if the system hoped to ignore it, it was about to discover just how visible the truth could be. The morning after the footage went viral, Marcus felt the shift immediately. It wasn't dramatic, not like flashing sirens or shouting crowds, but subtle and unmistakable. Emails went unanswered. Calls from editors went to voicemail. Assignments he'd previously lined up were suddenly on hold. Even his favorite coffee shop staff treated him like a stranger. He sat at his kitchen table, laptop open, scrolling through messages and social feeds. Support poured in, thousands of likes, shares, and encouraging words. But beneath it all, he felt a cold trace of institutional retaliation. The department hadn't acted violently, but their power had found a quieter, more insidious way to assert itself: isolation. "Marcus, are you seeing this?" Lena's voice came through the speaker. She sounded tight, tense. "What now?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. "They are circulating rumors," she said. "Editors are being pressured, some pulled assignments. People are telling your story but framing it like you provoked a stop." Marcus closed the laptop. "So the story becomes my fault." "Exactly," Lena said. "It's subtle, but that's how they maintain control. They want everyone to doubt you before even hearing the truth." He rubbed his temple. "I thought getting the footage out would protect me." "It protects you legally," Lena said, "but not socially. The backlash is engineered. You're pushing against a system that's practiced at turning attention into discredit." Marcus stared at his hands. He hadn't thought about the personal cost, how friends might question him, how opportunities might evaporate. He felt it now, like a physical weight pressing down on his chest. That afternoon, he walked to the local community center to check in with the Vigil organizers. Faces lit up at his arrival, warm and welcoming. But there was an undercurrent of caution. Whispers followed him. "Did you see the news? Are they safe?" One of the organizers, a woman named Tanya, approached him quietly. "Marcus, be careful. Not everyone out there wants justice. Some people want chaos." "I know," he said. I can't stay silent. Not anymore." Tanya placed a hand on his shoulder. "Just remember, there's a cost to bearing witness. Make sure you're ready for it." By evening, his phone rang again. This time, it was an unknown number. "Marcus Reed," a cold voice asked. "Yes." "You know what happens when people overstep?" the voice said before hanging up. Marcus swallowed, heart thudding. Threats weren't new, but the timing made it clear they were targeting him for exposure, for refusing to let the narrative stay sanitized. He called Lena immediately. "Someone just threatened me." "I'm not surprised," she said. "The department's strategy is slow, precise, and psychological. They can't touch the footage, but they can isolate you, intimidate you, make the world feel unsafe." I don't know if I can keep up," Marcus admitted. "You can," Lena said firmly. "You've documented everything. You've kept calm under scrutiny. You're not alone, and people are watching." That night, Marcus sat by the window, staring at the city lights. He thought about the officers, confident in their unbroken authority, and the community, some of whom looked to him for validation, for truth. The stakes had grown larger than a single encounter. His life, his work, and his reputation were all under scrutiny. He opened his laptop again, scrolling through comments. Many were supportive, but a steady stream questioned his motives, his timing, his professionalism. The calculated nature of the backlash stung more than he expected. At 2 a.m., he received a delivery, an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single printed screenshot, a portion of the footage he hadn't shared online, annotated with a message scrawled in red ink. "We see everything. Be careful." Marcus's hands trembled as he held it. Fear wasn't new to him, but this was targeted, personal, chilling. It confirmed what Lena had warned. The system could not erase truth, but it could make living with it dangerous. He sat back, closed his eyes, and breathed deeply. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about victory. It was about endurance, bearing witness, and the understanding that exposing injustice carried a weight that few could imagine. By morning, Marcus had made a decision. He would not retreat. Every step of the retaliation, every subtle threat, only strengthened his resolve. The system wanted him silenced or distracted, but he would speak anyway. Carefully, strategically, truth was his shield, his evidence, and his weapon. He lifted his camera and examined it, running fingers over the lenses as if drawing strength from their presence. The device had captured his innocence, their arrogance, and the subtle violence of authority misused. And now, Marcus Reed realized it would carry the story forward even if he faltered. Somewhere in the city, the officers thought they were untouchable. Marcus smiled faintly, bitterly. Not anymore. The hearing room smelled faintly of varnish and nervous energy. Chairs were arranged in a semicircle around a polished oak table. Marcus Reed sat in the center, camera bag at his feet, hands clasped together. The room hummed with whispers, community members, journalists, and a few plainclothes officers who had been summoned as witnesses. Mr. Reed, the board chair began, voice neutral but formal. We are here to review the incident from last week involving your detainment and subsequent questioning. Marcus nodded, keeping his eyes steady on the panel. I'm here to answer questions and provide context as accurately as possible. Please describe what happened, the chair said. Marcus took a breath. I arrived at a community vigil to photograph the event for Southside Outreach. After the vigil, I was approached by 2 officers. I was stopped, questioned, and taken to the precinct without cause. My camera recorded the encounter. The footage shows the officers' approach, their words, gestures, and the way I was guided during the questioning. The room fell silent as Marcus set his laptop on the table and plugged in the memory card. The panel watched as frames filled the screen, Marcus standing calmly, officers moving around him, the subtle intimidation, the casual assertion of authority. The first officer, called as a witness, squirmed slightly. We were following procedure, he said, tone measured. Marcus clicked through clips. Procedure doesn't erase bias. This footage demonstrates the steps you took, your focus on me, the selective questioning, and the verbal framing that implied guilt despite no evidence. A panel member leaned forward. Officer, can you explain why Mr. Reed was singled out? The officer glanced down. We received a call about suspicious activity. His presence, his equipment. His presence. Marcus interrupted softly. His presence as a black man with a camera documenting a vigil. The room shifted. The tension was palpable. Objection, muttered the officer's attorney. The witness is speculating on motive. I'm not speculating, Marcus said evenly. I'm presenting the context. The context is essential. The footage speaks for itself. The board continued to ask questions, but now the dialogue carried weight. The officers' testimonies began to contradict the recorded evidence. Small discrepancies emerged, the timing of statements, gestures unmentioned in reports, pauses where officers had improvised authority. A civilian witness, a young woman from the vigil, spoke next. I saw Marcus standing quietly. He never interfered. The officers came to him directly. I saw the hand on his shoulder, guiding him. It wasn't necessary. Marcus's heart thudded. The corroboration was quiet but potent. The weight of multiple perspectives amplified the truth. One panel member turned to Marcus. How did this affect you personally? I've been documenting community events for years, Marcus said. I've faced scrutiny, yes, but this encounter was different. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern of assumptions based on my race, my equipment, and my presence. It was dismissive, invasive, and disempowering. The board murmured. Marcus let the words settle. Silence stretched, heavy but controlled. Finally, the chair spoke. We will review all submitted evidence, including the footage and testimonies. This hearing demonstrates the importance of transparency and accountability. The board will make recommendations based on what has been presented. Marcus nodded. Thank you. As he packed his laptop, he noticed the officers leaving the room. Faces tight, expressions controlled but undeniably strained. Their authority had been questioned in a setting designed for impartial review. For the first time, he saw the cracks in their confidence. Lena, waiting outside, caught his eye. She gave a small, encouraging nod. "They are paying attention," she said. Marcus exhaled. "It's not enough," he said, "but it's a start." "That's all anyone can ask for," Lena replied. He walked out into the afternoon sunlight, camera in hand, ready to document the aftermath, the conversations, the reactions, the slow unfolding of accountability. The world was watching now, and Marcus knew that each frame he captured, each clip he preserved, would carry more weight than he ever imagined. The officers had thought they controlled the story. They hadn't. The footage had spoken, and Marcus Reed had made sure the truth could no longer be ignored. The morning sun caught the edges of Marcus's laptop as he scrolled through the investigative report Lena had just sent him. She had spent the night combing through public records, previous complaints, internal memos, anything that could show a pattern. "Marcus, look at this," she said over the phone, her voice tight with urgency. He leaned closer. On the screen, dozens of incidents surfaced. Prior complaints against the same officers for racial profiling, vague suspicious activity calls, community members' statements dismissed as perceptions. Patterns that had been hidden in plain sight. "They've done this before," Marcus said quietly. "They have," Lena confirmed. "And now, with your footage, the board can't ignore it. Neither can the public." He felt a familiar mix of dread and determination. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about accountability, about exposing the subtle, systemic abuses that rarely made headlines. By noon, the story had gained traction. Independent media outlets picked up Lena's analysis, linking past incidents to Marcus's recent encounter. Social media lit up with discussions, threads dissecting every moment of the footage, demanding departmental accountability. Marcus watched the reactions with cautious optimism. Community members shared their own experiences. Public officials commented, and reporters requested interviews. He had become a reluctant focal point, a conduit for collective frustration. "Marcus," Lena said again, "this is more than a single incident. People are seeing the pattern. The department's leadership is being questioned. They can't hide behind procedure anymore." He exhaled, letting the weight of the moment settle. "It's strange," he admitted. "I didn't set out to expose the system. I just wanted to do my job. But now, it feels like the system itself is on trial." "Yes," Lena said, "and your footage is the evidence no one can deny." Later that afternoon, Marcus attended a community forum. Residents gathered to discuss policing policies, sharing personal stories and concerns. The footage played on a projector, the room silent as everyone watched Marcus's experience unfold on screen. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some shocked, others nodding in recognition. A panel of local journalists and civic leaders debated next steps, calling for transparency, reforms, and independent oversight. The discussion was charged, emotional, and real. Marcus felt the energy in the room, a mixture of anger, hope, and determination. After the forum, a reporter approached him. "Marcus, do you think the officers will face consequences?" He hesitated. "I don't know, but I do know that their actions are no longer hidden. That alone changes the stakes." Walking home, Marcus reflected on the emotional cost of exposure. Friends and family had worried, and his professional reputation had been tested. He had faced subtle retaliation, threats, and social scrutiny. The work had taken a toll. But seeing the public engage, seeing the true surface, he felt a fragile sense of justice. Back in his apartment, he reviewed the footage once more, frame by frame. Every subtle gesture, every offhand comment, every attempt to control the narrative was documented. The system's flaws were laid bare, not in exaggeration, but in reality. Marcus realized that exposure didn't guarantee complete justice. It didn't erase the trauma, the stress, or the threats, but it forced accountability, even if only incrementally. It revealed patterns that otherwise would have remained invisible. He looked out the window at the city lights. Somewhere, the officers were aware of the growing scrutiny. Their authority, previously assumed, was now challenged, and Marcus understood that truth, carefully documented and shared, could wield power in ways no single individual might expect. He placed his camera on the table, a symbol of vigilance and witness. The exposure was not the end. It was a pivotal moment, a shift in the balance of accountability. Somewhere beneath the polished offices, the officers had to reckon with the fact that their actions were no longer private, their control no longer absolute. Marcus felt the weight of this revelation, both empowering and exhausting. He knew the journey toward justice was far from over. But for the first time in days, he felt the faintest glimmer of equilibrium, a small victory, hard-earned, grounded in the undeniable clarity of evidence. And Marcus Reed was ready for what came next. Weeks had passed since the footage went public, and the reverberations were still echoing. Marcus Reed sat at his apartment desk, staring at the city through rain-streaked windows. The lights of cars and street lamps shimmered on wet pavement, fragmented and uneven, much like the sense of balance he felt inside himself. The department had issued statements, conducted internal reviews, and finally acknowledged patterns that had long been ignored. 2 officers had been suspended pending further investigation, and talk of policy reform began circulating through city council meetings. Yet, even with public recognition, Marcus felt the emotional toll pressing down on him. The isolation, the threats, the constant replaying of events, it lingered in the back of his mind, a persistent hum he couldn't silence. Keisha visited that afternoon. Her presence was a small comfort, grounding him after nights of restless sleep and endless scrolling through news coverage. "You look tired," she said gently. "I am," Marcus admitted. "It's not the work itself. It's the weight of it all. The exposure, the backlash, the constant vigilance." "You did the right thing," she said firmly. "People are listening now. They see what really happened." "I know," he said, "but justice feels partial, and I paid a price for speaking out." He thought of Lena, tirelessly tracking the fallout, compiling evidence, connecting dots. Thought of the community members who came forward, trusting him to amplify their voices. He had gained influence, but influence had its own cost. Scrutiny, threats, and a sense of perpetual responsibility. Later that evening, Marcus reviewed his camera gear. Each lens, each body, each card held fragments of truth. Memories, recordings, evidence, moments he captured under pressure, fear, and indignation. They were invaluable, but the act of holding and revisiting them was exhausting, both emotionally and mentally. The news channels still replayed snippets, analyses dissecting behavior, commentary on racial profiling, discussions of civil rights. Marcus watched one segment and flinched at how casually some commentators dismissed the officer's conduct. The words stung, reminders that progress was uneven, fragile, and often incomplete. He closed the laptop and leaned back in his chair. He understood that exposing wrongdoing came with a dual reality, the satisfaction of revealing truth and the heavy burden of living with its consequences. He had challenged the system, forced attention to patterns that otherwise would have gone unnoticed, but the personal toll was undeniable. The next morning, Marcus returned to the community center, camera in hand. He documented workshops, neighborhood meetings, quiet moments of solidarity. His work had shifted. No longer was it merely about capturing events. Now it was about witness, accountability, and context. Every photograph, every frame, was infused with purpose and vigilance. He walked outside during a break, feeling the morning air, crisp and sharp. Somewhere in the city, the officers involved now faced scrutiny and consequences. Some resigned quietly, others were reassigned, and internal reviews continued. Change was slow, imperfect, but tangible. Marcus knew the cost of truth. He knew the fatigue, the fear, the moments of doubt. Yet, he also knew the resilience it fostered. Speaking out had exacted a toll, but it had also illuminated injustice, galvanized the community, and strengthened his resolve. At the edge of the city park, he lifted his camera once more. Children played nearby, laughter breaking the quiet tension that had filled the past weeks. He framed a shot, small, ordinary, human, but laden with meaning. Every frame was a reminder that life continued, that truth persisted, and that accountability, however delayed or partial, mattered. Marcus exhaled a deep, measured breath. Justice was never simple, never clean, and never without cost. But it was worth enduring. And as he looked down at his camera, ready to capture the next moment. He realized the journey had changed him, not just as a photographer, but as a witness to the world's flaws and its possibilities. He raised the lens, steady and deliberate, and captured the light. And Marcus Reed knew that the story and the work it demanded would continue. The morning sunlight spilled through the blinds of Marcus's apartment, catching dust motes in its warm glow. It had been months since the footage went public, but the ripple effects were still unfolding. The department had conducted a full internal review. 2 officers had been suspended indefinitely, and 1 had resigned. Policy reforms were being drafted, procedural manuals rewritten, oversight committees established. The headlines had slowed, but the impact was undeniable. Marcus sat at his kitchen table, coffee in hand, reflecting. There was no sense of triumph, no dramatic gavel, no courtroom victory, just a quiet, hard-earned acknowledgement of the system, for all its flaws, could be compelled to reckon with itself. Still, the emotional cost lingered, nights of anxiety, the strain on friendships, the lingering doubt every time he walked past a police cruiser. The phone rang. It was Lena. "They are finally issuing a formal statement," she said, voice lighter than it had been in weeks, acknowledging mishandling and committing to review patterns of racial bias. Marcus exhaled. "It's something. Not everything, but something." "Yes," Lena said. "And you did it. You held the truth in your hands, documented it, shared it. That's why this matters." He smiled faintly. "I didn't expect it to feel so lonely." "It always does," she replied. "Speaking truth rarely comes without isolation. But you're not alone. People listened. They learned." Marcus closed his eyes. He thought of the vigil, the candles flickering in the night. The community's trust had been placed in him, and he had honored it even at great personal cost. The footage had exposed not only procedural failure, but the subtle, pervasive undercurrent of bias. And though accountability was partial and imperfect, it existed now in a way it hadn't before. Later that day, Marcus returned to the community center. The air smelled faintly of chalk and old coffee. Children ran between the tables set up for workshops, while organizers discussed safety protocols and neighborhood projects. He raised his camera, capturing the ordinary moments, the laughter, the focus, the resilience. Every frame carried significance, a testament to endurance and truth. A group of residents approached him. "Marcus," one said, "thank you for standing up. We see what you did." "I just did my job," he said. "I documented what was there." "But it mattered," another added. "You forced accountability when it seemed impossible." Marcus nodded, humbled. "It came with a cost," he admitted. "I won't pretend otherwise. But it also came with responsibility and a chance to make things a little better." The officers involved were still in procedural limbo, facing investigations and public scrutiny. No single act of exposure erased the broader patterns of bias, but change had begun, slow, uneven, and fragile. Marcus understood that reform required persistence, vigilance, and courage. Walking home, he passed a street where community vigil had once been held. Candles now replaced by morning light and the sound of life returning. He thought of every frame he had captured, every subtle gesture that revealed truth. Each photo, each clip, had been a witness in itself, ensuring that accountability was not just promised, but visible. At his apartment, Marcus sat at his desk, reviewing new assignments. He could see opportunities reopening, editorial work, community projects, journalism requests. His reputation had survived, though scarred like polished stone. The exposure had exacted a toll, but it had also solidified his role as a witness, a chronicler of both injustice and resilience. He lifted his camera once more, steadying it in his hands. Outside, the city moved, full of contradictions, hope and tension, light and shadow. Marcus framed a shot, a child playing near the sidewalk, a mother watching attentively, a police cruiser gliding past in the distance. The frame captured the delicate balance of a world still negotiating fairness, oversight, and human dignity. And in that frame, Marcus saw the culmination of his journey, not vengeance, not clean victory, but the quiet, persistent power of truth. He lowered the camera, eyes steady. He knew that the story would continue, that the system would still falter, that bias would persist. But now, there was evidence, awareness, and the faint hope that accountability could endure. Marcus Reed exhaled, feeling the weight lift slightly. The battle was far from over, but he had done what he could, and for now, that was enough.